Chicago Mayor Brandon Johnson appeared before a congressional committee in Washington, D.C. on Wednesday, facing intense scrutiny over the city's sanctuary city policies. The hearing, led by the Republican-controlled House Oversight Committee, became a battleground for political ideology, with Johnson defending Chicago's stance alongside the mayors of Boston, New York City, and Denver. While the hearing's ostensible purpose was to discuss sanctuary city laws, it frequently veered into partisan exchanges, with Republicans attempting to put Johnson on the defensive. Preparation and strategy. Prior to the hearing, Johnson spent several days preparing with his team and seeking counsel from former Chicago mayors. His primary strategic goal was to maintain composure and avoid making statements that could harm Chicago's policies or his own political standing. Political consultant Delmarie Cobb emphasized that Johnson needed to stay on message and not allow himself to be baited by hostile questions from Republican representatives. Johnson followed this advice carefully, managing to navigate the tense hearing without any major missteps. Johnson is the first Chicago mayor since Richard M. Daley to testify before Congress. His testimony came at a time when sanctuary city policies have become a focal point of national debate, with major U.S. cities struggling to manage an influx of migrants while also adhering to local laws that limit cooperation with federal immigration enforcement. The hearing provided a platform for both Johnson and his critics to voice their perspectives on the impact of sanctuary city policies on crime, public safety, and municipal resources. The hearing, heated exchanges, and political posturing. From the outset, the hearing was contentious. Republican committee members sought to corner Johnson with questions unrelated to sanctuary city policies, attempting to trip him up and portray him as unprepared. One such moment occurred when Texas Congressman Brandon Gill aggressively questioned Johnson about a room full of gifts received by the mayor's office, an issue unrelated to the hearing's topic. Despite the adversarial nature of these exchanges, Johnson remained composed, refusing to engage in unnecessary confrontations. Another moment of tension arose when Florida Congressman Byron Donalds pressed Johnson for a precise figure on how much money Chicago had spent on services for migrants. Johnson responded by stating that migrant-related expenditures amounted to approximately 1% of the city's overall budget. When Johnson did not immediately provide an exact dollar amount, Donalds accused him of lacking control over his city's finances. Despite repeated attempts to discredit him, Johnson maintained his stance and emphasized that Chicago's approach to immigration enhances public safety rather than undermining it, defending Chicago's sanctuary city policies. During his testimony, Johnson made a passionate argument for why sanctuary city policies are essential for maintaining public trust and security. He refuted Republican claims that these policies create a haven for criminals, countering that they actually encourage undocumented residents to cooperate with law enforcement without fear of deportation. Johnson dismissed GOP characterizations of sanctuary cities as lawless zones, stating, "Sensationalizing tragedy in the name of political expediency is not governing, it's grandstanding. Every violent crime is devastating, but scapegoating entire communities is not only misleading, it is unjust, and it is beneath us." Johnson further emphasized that any policies amplifying fears of deportation would make cities more dangerous by discouraging witnesses and victims from engaging with law enforcement. His stance was supported by Democratic lawmakers, including Illinois Representative Raja Krishnamurthy, who clarified that Chicago does cooperate with federal authorities when a criminal warrant is obtained. The broader political context, the hearing, underscored the growing divide between Democratic-led cities and Republican-controlled states over immigration policy. Republican committee members argued that sanctuary city laws obstruct federal immigration enforcement and endanger public safety, while Democratic leaders contended that such policies foster safer communities by allowing immigrants to report crimes without fear of deportation. House Oversight Committee Chairman James Comer, RKY, stated, "The mayors here today each lead so-called sanctuary cities. And let's be clear, these policies only create sanctuary for criminals." Johnson, however, rejected this narrative, asserting that sanctuary policies serve a crucial role in public safety and community stability. He pointed to Chicago's policies as a means of ensuring that all residents, regardless of immigration status, feel secure enough to report crimes and cooperate with law. Criticism from law enforcement and political opponents among those present at the hearing was Chicago Police Fraternal Order of Police, FOP, President John Catanzara, a vocal critic of Johnson's policies. Catanzara argued that Johnson's approach to immigration enforcement weakens law enforcement's ability to maintain public safety. He expressed frustration with what he viewed as Johnson's reluctance to acknowledge the negative consequences of sanctuary policies. "I thought it was important to be here to push back and let Brandon know that his nonsense and his lies were not going to go unchallenged," Catanzara said. This reflects a broader debate in Chicago, where law enforcement and conservative groups have pushed for greater cooperation between local police and federal immigration authorities. Johnson, however, remained firm in his stance, insisting that his administration would not be swayed by political pressure. Conclusion: a measured performance under pressure. Despite the heated exchanges, Johnson and his fellow mayors remained steadfast in their commitment to sanctuary city policies. Johnson avoided any major gaffes or confrontations that could have undermined his position, a feat that Democratic strategists saw as a success given the nature of the hearing. Political consultant Aviva Bowen remarked, "He was reserved. He was steady. He was very fully practiced. I don't think there was ever going to be a win here today. I think he had to avoid losing big on a national stage." Before departing Washington, Johnson reflected on his experience, likening the hearing to the challenges he faced as a middle school teacher in Chicago public schools. "I will say this, being a middle school teacher in Chicago public schools certainly prepares you for this committee." The hearing ultimately served less as a forum for genuine discussion and more as a platform for political grandstanding. While Republicans sought to use the event to discredit sanctuary city policies, Johnson and his counterparts held firm, signaling that their cities would not be intimidated into reversing course. As the national debate over immigration continues, the battle between sanctuary cities and their opponents is likely to intensify, with both sides using moments like these to rally their respective bases.